The day began like any other, with a quiet sunrise painting the sky over my modest home. I never imagined that by sunset, my life would be turned upside down. The knock on my door was polite at first, but the words that followed shattered me. "Mom, you need to leave. It's our home now." My daughter, the little girl I had raised, stood beside her husband, her eyes hard, unrecognizable to me. I froze. My heart ached as I realized that everything I had known, the home I had poured my love into, the memories etched into every corner, was no longer mine. I had been thrown out, not by strangers, but by the people I had trusted the most. The pain was suffocating, but deep inside, a small spark refused to die. I clutched my coat, my bag, and walked into the world that suddenly felt colder and emptier than ever. I wandered aimlessly for a while, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. Thoughts tumbled through my mind like relentless waves. Was I a bad mother? Did I fail as a parent? How could they do this? The streets were bustling, yet I felt utterly alone, invisible among the crowd. I ended up sitting on a park bench, watching life move on without me, when a small idea began to form. For years, I had put my own dreams aside, believing that stability and family came first, but now with nothing holding me back, perhaps I had a chance to build something for myself, a life I had always postponed. I remembered a passion I had shelved long ago, designing handmade jewelry. I used to spend hours creating delicate necklaces and bracelets for friends and family, but life's responsibilities had buried that dream under bills and caregiving. That evening, in a tiny rented studio, I dusted off my old supplies and began again. At first, it was just therapy, something to fill the gnawing emptiness. But as I worked, I realized something remarkable. My pieces were extraordinary. They carried a story, a soul, a warmth that no mass-produced trinket could ever match. Word spread faster than I could have imagined. Local boutiques began to feature my designs, social media followers multiplied, and orders started rolling in. The same hands that had once wiped away tears now shaped gold and silver into dreams. Within months, the tiny spark that had refused to die became a roaring flame. The girl who had been abandoned by her own family was now commanding a life of success and independence. And yet, the pain lingered. My daughter and her husband had no idea that the woman they had pushed out was soaring higher than they could have ever imagined. One evening, I received an invitation to showcase my jewelry at a high-profile fashion event. As I stood backstage preparing to reveal my collection, I realized how far I had come. The woman who had been rejected, the woman who had doubted herself, was about to stand in the spotlight of her own making. My phone buzzed. It was a message from my daughter. "Mom, we didn't know. We were wrong. Can we talk?" For a moment I felt the old pain stir, but I also saw something new. Strength. I had found myself, my purpose, my worth. I could forgive, perhaps even reconnect, but I would never let anyone define my life again. That night, under the bright lights, I became a millionaire, not just in wealth, but in resilience, courage, and the undeniable power of believing in oneself. Even when life seemed to turn its back, I had discovered a truth that no betrayal could take away. The strongest homes are not built from bricks and memories alone. They are built from courage, passion, and the unwavering belief that your best life is waiting, even after the darkest days. I had lost a home, but I had found myself, and that, in the end, was worth more than any house could ever hold. The next chapter began with a quiet determination. I could have spent my newfound fortune in solitude, but I wanted my story to mean something more. I started mentoring women who had faced similar betrayals, who had lost homes, jobs, or love, teaching them that resilience and self-belief were not just cliches, they were tools for transformation. Each success story, each woman reclaiming her life, reminded me of the strength that hardship could ignite. One day I received an unexpected visit. My daughter stood at my doorstep again, this time hesitant, unsure. Her eyes were softer, filled with a complicated mix of shame, regret, and love. I invited her in, not out of weakness, but because forgiveness had its own power. We talked, tears flowing both ways, and I realized that while some bridges can be rebuilt, the foundation must be mutual respect, humility, and understanding. That day, I taught my daughter an invaluable lesson. A mother's love is endless, but so is her ability to rise, to thrive, and to claim her life, regardless of who tries to hold her back. Months turned into years, and my jewelry empire expanded internationally. Yet the greatest success was never the money, it was the story. The story of a woman who was thrown out of her home, abandoned by those she loved most, only to rise from the ashes with fire in her heart. People would ask me how I did it, and I would smile, thinking of that park bench, of the first necklace I ever made after being rejected, of the countless nights I doubted myself but didn't give up. My answer was always the same: sometimes losing everything is the universe's way of giving you everything you truly deserve. By the time I looked back, I understood the full circle of life. Pain and betrayal had been teachers, not enemies. The daughter who had hurt me had unknowingly pushed me toward a destiny far greater than I could have imagined. I had become a millionaire, yes, but more importantly, I had become unshakable, unstoppable, and unapologetically myself. Life had taken me to the edge of despair, only to lift me higher than I had ever dreamed. And now, anyone who hears my story knows this truth. When one door closes, don't just walk through another. Build a palace where you belong, brick by brick, with courage and love as your foundation. The day my daughter and her husband threw me out of my own home, I felt my heart shatter into a million pieces. I thought my life was over, but by sunset, I had become a millionaire. How did it happen? Stay with me, because this story will change how you see betrayal, resilience, and the power of never giving up. That morning began like any other. I made breakfast, tidied up the house, and waited for my daughter to visit. But when she arrived, she was not the little girl I had raised. Beside her stood her husband, and in her eyes, I saw cold determination. "Mom, you need to leave. It's our home now." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. The home I had nurtured, the memories I had built over decades, suddenly meant nothing. I felt abandoned, invisible, heartbroken. I walked out with only a small bag, wandering the streets as waves of anger, confusion, and sadness crashed over me. I questioned everything. Was I not enough? Did I fail as a parent? Could I ever forgive this betrayal? The world felt colder than ever, but somewhere deep inside, a tiny spark whispered, "This isn't the end." Sitting on a park bench that afternoon, I remembered a dream I had buried long ago: designing jewelry. For years, I had made necklaces and bracelets for friends, but responsibilities and life's pressures had pushed that passion aside. Now, with nothing left to lose, I dusted off my tools and began creating. At first, it was just therapy. But soon, something miraculous happened. My jewelry wasn't just pretty. It carried a story, a warmth, a soul. Word spread. Local shops featured my pieces. Social media followers began sharing my work. Orders came in, first small, then larger. The woman they had thrown out of her home was starting to shine, stronger than ever. The real turning point came months later. I was invited to showcase my jewelry at a major fashion event. Backstage, I looked at my reflection and barely recognized the woman staring back. She had been broken, abandoned, but now she was thriving. My phone buzzed. It was a message from my daughter. "Mom, we didn't know. Can we talk?" I paused, feeling the old pain rise, but also a new strength. I could forgive, but I would never allow anyone to define my worth again. That night, under the bright lights, I became a millionaire, not just in money, but in courage, independence, and self-belief. I didn't stop with my own success. I began mentoring women who had faced betrayal, abandonment, or failure. I showed them that resilience and self-belief weren't just words. They were lifelines. Each success story reminded me of the fire I had discovered within myself. On that painful day one afternoon, my daughter returned, hesitant and unsure. Her eyes were soft, full of regret. I welcomed her, not from weakness but from strength. We spoke honestly, tears flowing both ways. I realized that forgiveness was powerful, but only if it came from a place of unshakable self-worth. Over the years, my jewelry business expanded internationally. But the greatest success wasn't the money, it was the journey. From that park bench to a global stage, from heartbreak to empowerment, I had learned a truth. Few understand the strongest homes are not built from walls and furniture, they are built from courage, love, and belief in yourself. By losing everything, I had gained everything I truly deserved. The daughter who hurt me had unknowingly pushed me toward a destiny greater than I could have imagined. I had become unshakable, unstoppable, and unapologetically myself. So if life ever pushes you out, abandons you, or makes you feel worthless, remember this: losing everything is not the end. It's an opportunity to discover your own power. Build your palace, brick by brick, from resilience, passion, and love. The world may turn its back, but your courage can take you farther than you ever dreamed. I became a millionaire the day they threw me out, but the real wealth was the woman I became in the process. Think about your life today. What dream have you set aside? What spark have you ignored? Sometimes the universe closes one door only to open a palace of possibilities. Your best life is waiting. Trust yourself, rise, and never stop believing. Narration, expanded, true success isn't measured in bank accounts or possessions. It's measured in courage, in the strength to rise after being broken, and in the freedom to live life on your own terms. I had been abandoned, hurt, and doubted, yet here I stood, not just wealthy but unshakable, independent, and proud of every step I had taken to reclaim my life. Every necklace I created, every woman I mentored, every barrier I overcame, these were the true treasures of my journey. Wealth is fleeting, but self-worth, resilience, and passion last forever. Music, gradually uplifting orchestral score with a gentle string build, adding soft percussion as tension shifts to triumph. Let it swell at the emotional high point. Visuals, wide shot of the fashion show stage with lights glimmering and audience applauding. Close-ups of the protagonist confidently presenting her jewelry, smiling with quiet pride. Intercut with scenes of her mentoring women, teaching them, celebrating small victories, and seeing their confidence grow. Subtle slow motion of her walking backstage, sunlight streaming in through windows, symbolizing transformation and hope. Emotional cue. Camera slowly pans upward as stage lights shine down, visually emphasizing her rise from hardship to triumph. Include lingering close-ups of her eyes and subtle smiles, small gestures that communicate inner strength and emotional victory. Pause briefly at the peak of music to let the emotional resonance settle with viewers before transitioning. Narration. After discovering my own strength, I realized that my journey wasn't just about me. So many women, like me, had been betrayed, abandoned, or told they weren't enough. I wanted to show them that they could rise, reclaim their power, and create a life they truly deserved. I began mentoring women, teaching them to harness their talents, follow their passions, and never let anyone define their worth. Every success story, every woman who found her spark, reminded me of the fire that hardship can ignite within us all. Music, gentle, hopeful piano with light strings, gradually building warmth. Visuals, shots of protagonist working with a small group of women, hands guiding, encouraging smiles, laughter, and creative moments. Intercut with close-ups of jewelry being made, hands threading beads, painting or designing. Scenes of women leaving her studio smiling, empowered, symbolizing transformation. Emotional cue, slow-motion shots of women hugging, high fives, and laughter to emphasize empowerment and emotional triumph. Pause after each success story to let viewers absorb the emotional weight. Narration. One day, my daughter returned. She stood at my door, hesitant, unsure, her eyes searching mine for forgiveness. The same little girl I had raised had grown, but she was remorseful. I invited her in, not from weakness but from strength. We spoke honestly, tears flowing both ways. I realized that forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about honoring your own growth while letting someone else face theirs. That day, I taught my daughter an invaluable lesson. A mother's love is endless, but so is her power to rise, to thrive, and to claim her life. Music, soft, reflective acoustic guitar or piano, gentle crescendo as emotions build. Visuals, Close-up of daughter's hesitant face, followed by her stepping into the studio. Medium shots of them talking, both tearful, slowly moving to smiles of reconciliation. Soft lighting, warm tones to emphasize emotional intimacy and hope. Emotional cue. Pause after key lines, allowing viewers to feel the weight of forgiveness and reconciliation. Slow zoom in on protagonist's face to highlight strength and grace. Narration. Over time, my jewelry business expanded internationally, but the real treasure wasn't in the money, it was in the life I built, the women I empowered, and the courage I discovered within myself. From the park bench where I first doubted everything, to the international stage where I now stood, I realized that true wealth is measured in independence, self-worth, and the ability to rise no matter how deep the fall. Music. Gradually uplifting orchestral score with strings and subtle percussion, rising to a triumphant peak. Visuals, montage, fashion show stage, audience applause, mentoring sessions, creative work, slow-motion shots of protagonist walking confidently, sunlight streaming, smiling at her life, intercut close-ups of jewelry sparkling under lights, symbolizing her personal and professional triumph. By the time I looked back, I realized how far I had come. The home that had once defined me, the daughter and son-in-law who had rejected me, they were no longer the measure of my worth. I had built something far greater, a life forged from resilience, courage, and the refusal to let anyone else determine my value. I had become a millionaire, yes, but more importantly, I had become the woman I was always meant to be. Every necklace I designed, every woman I mentored, every obstacle I overcame, reminded me that true wealth isn't money. It's self-belief, independence, and the ability to rise when life pushes you down. Losing my home had been devastating, but it had also been my greatest gift, opening the door to a future I never imagined. I learned that betrayal, heartbreak, and loss don't have to define you, they can refine you. And so I walked forward with strength, grace, and purpose, knowing that the life I had dreamed of was no longer just a possibility, it was my reality. The day they threw me out, I lost a home, but I gained the world, and in that I discovered the greatest truth of all: sometimes losing everything is the first step to gaining everything you were meant to have.